The 3rd of July. Yes, I'm still at the same desk, but it seems to me that I am going to have to draw a line under everything and continue in a different tone. I must admit a new insight into my life and find a place for it. What is at stake is our impending destruction and annihilation. We can have no more illusions about that. They're out to destroy us completely. We must accept that and go on from there. Today I was filled with terrible despair, and I shall have to come to terms with that as well. And perhaps, or rather certainly, that too is the result of yesterday's 4 aspirins. Even if we are consigned to hell, let us go there as gracefully as we can. I did not really want to put it so blandly. Why this mood at this particular moment? Is it because I have a blister on my foot from walking through the hot town? Because so many people have had sore feet ever since they were stopped from using the trains? Because of Renate's pale little face? Because she has to walk to school on her short little legs through the heat 1 hour there and 1 hour back? Because Liesel stood in a queue and didn't get any vegetables after all? It is for such an awful lot of reasons, all of them petty in themselves, but all of them part of the great campaign to destroy us. Some are merely grotesque by comparison, though equally hard to grasp. That S. may no longer visit this house, no longer has access to the piano or to his books. That I may not visit Tide, and so on. I am attaching what Nettie wrote to S. As for me, I still feel absolutely certain that my wish will be fulfilled, that I shall be going to Russia one day, that I shall be one of the many small links between Russia and Europe. This feeling is so strong that it cannot be upset by this new certainty. The one certainty will not be corroded or negated by the other. That what they are after is our total destruction. I accept it. I know it now, and I shall not burden others with my fears. I shall not be bitter if others fail to grasp what is happening to us Jews. I work and continue to live with the same conviction, and I find life meaningful. Yes, meaningful, although I hardly dare say so in company these days. Living and dying, sorrow and joy, the blisters on my feet and the jasmine behind the house, the persecution, the unspeakable horrors. It is all as one in me, and I accept it all as one mighty whole, and begin to grasp it better, if only for myself, without being able to explain to anyone else how it all hangs together. I wish I could live for a long time, so that one day I may know how to explain it. And if I am not granted that wish, well, then somebody else will perhaps do it, carry on from where my life has been cut short. And that is why I must try to live a good and faithful life to my last breath, so that those who come after me and do not have to start all over again need not face the same difficulties. Isn't it doing something for future generations? Bernard's Jewish friend had them ask me for the latest promulgations. Didn't I now agree that all Germans should be done away with, preferably hung, drawn, and quartered? And I thought, oh yes, that would satisfy our personal bitterness and vengeful feelings. But why take the cheapest and easiest way? Why only think of satisfying one's own ego? For that is what it really comes down to when all is said and done. Then those who come after us will be no further ahead and will have to start all over again. So why not take just one little step forward ourselves? Not just in theory, but through daily practice. For instance, my sudden irritation and aggressiveness towards Kath, when I feel that deep down she is defending her country, or rather, the good there is in her country, for, after all, those who live there are people like ourselves. Surely that is right. You can spin as many theories as you like, but they are people like ourselves. That is something we must cling to through thick and thin, and shout into the face of all that hatred. Yes, we carry everything within us, God and heaven and hell and earth and life and death and all of history. The externals are simply so many props. Everything we need is within us. And we have to take everything that comes, the bad with the good, which does not mean we cannot devote our lives to curing the bad. But we must know what motives inspire our struggles, and we must begin with ourselves, every day anew. There was a time when I thought that I had to come up with a host of brilliant ideas each day. And now I sometimes feel like a barren stretch of land on which nothing grows, but which is nevertheless spanned by a high, wide sky. And this way is by far the better. Nowadays I am suspicious of the multitude of thoughts that well up. I would sooner lie fallow and wait. Such an awful lot has happened inside me these last few days. Something has crystallized. I have looked our destruction, our miserable end, which has already begun in so many small ways in our daily life, straight in the eye, and accepted it into my life, and my love of life has not been diminished. I am not bitter or rebellious or in any way discouraged. I continue to grow from day to day, even with the likelihood of destruction staring me in the face. I shall no longer flirt with words, for words can merely evoke misunderstandings. I've come to terms with life. Nothing can happen to me, and after all, my personal fate is not the issue. It doesn't really matter if it is I who perish or another. What matters is that we are all marked men. That's what I sometimes say to others, although it doesn't make much sense, and doesn't really explain what I mean. And that doesn't really matter either. By coming to terms with life, I mean, the reality of death has become a definite part of my life. My life has, so to speak, been extended by death, by my looking death in the eye and accepting it, by accepting destruction as part of life, and no longer wasting my energies on fear of death or the refusal to acknowledge its inevitability. Through non-acceptance, and through having all those fears, most people are left with just a pitiful and mutilated slice of life, which can hardly be called life at all. It sounds paradoxical. By excluding death from our life, we cannot live a full life, and by admitting death into our life, we enlarge it and enrich it. This has been my first real confrontation with death. I never knew what to make of it before. I had such a virginal attitude toward it. I have never seen a dead person. Just imagine, a world sown with 1,000,000 corpses, and in 27 years I have never seen a single one. I have often wondered what my attitude toward death really is. I never delved deeply into the question. There was no need for that. And now death has come as large as life, and I greet him as an old acquaintance. Everything is so simple. You don't have to have any profound thoughts on the subject. There death suddenly stands, having slipped simply, unmistakably, and almost silently into my life. He has a place in it now, and I know now that he is part of it, and so I can go to sleep peacefully. It is 10 o'clock. I didn't do very much today. I fell behind, what with having to walk hot pavements on my blistered feet and similar petty annoyances. Then I was overcome with despair and uncertainty, and then I went to see S. He had a headache, and that worried him, for normally everything works so smoothly in his powerful body. I lay in his arms, and he was so sweet and so gentle, almost wistful. I feel a new period is beginning in our lives, more serious and more intense, one in which we shall concentrate on the essentials. Every day we shed more trivia. We are moving towards our destruction. That is quite plain now. We mustn't fool ourselves about that. Tomorrow night I shall borrow Dickie's bed. She will sleep on the ground floor and come up to wake me in the morning. We can still do that. And the support we can give each other in these hard times will go on growing. And the way that question of marrying or not marrying ought to be resolved will also become clear. Everything keeps growing, even now, even though it seems pointless. And now I am going to bed. A little later. And if this day has brought me nothing else, not yet that fine or fatal confrontation with death and extinction, then I am nevertheless grateful for that kosher German soldier at the kiosk with his bag of carrots and cauliflowers. First he pushed that note into the hand of the girl on the tram, and then came the letter that I had to read and reread. She reminded him so much of the late rabbi's daughter, whom he had nursed on her deathbed for days and nights on end. And tonight he is paying a visit. And when Liesel told me all this, I knew at once. I shall have to pray for this German soldier. Out of all those uniforms, one has been given a face now. There will be other faces, too, in which we shall be able to read something we understand. The German soldiers suffer as well. There are no frontiers between suffering people, and we must pray for them all. Good night. I have grown older again since last night, many, many years older, and more serious at one fell swoop. My despondency has left me, and a greater power than any ever I knew has taken its place. This, too, by learning to know and to accept one's own inadequacies, one increases one's own strength. It is all so simple, and is becoming clearer and clearer to me, and I hope to be granted a long life so that I can make it clear to others as well. And now, really, good night.